we had a saying actually in the mission, which I think pretty much holds true, and that is that Americans eat to live, but Italians live to eat, and they really do. I mean, it is Italian food, even today. I mean, it's really my food of choice. I love Italian food. They have perfected the art of eating, and they really do. I mean, they use that time, dinner time, and things are as special. It's almost sacred to them, and you get together as a family, and every 2 or 3 weeks you usually have a big family get together, and everybody comes and they bring stuff, and they got I got to tell you about one particular thing that we time, just to give you an example of what it's like to eat through Italiano. We were down at the grocery store on a P day buying stuff, and there was this guy that was there, and he says, "Are you Americans?" And we said, "Yeah, we're Americans." Me and my companion were at the time, Americans. And so he said, "Well, we'd love to talk to you." And we thought, "Wow, this is great," And we're thinking, "Okay, we're going to talk about the gospel." Well, they just wanted to talk about America, But they said, "Here's our address." They give us an address and so forth, and we'll see you on this day at this time and so forth. It was about like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and so we show up for this appointment, but we couldn't hardly find it. We found where the street was, and we were following the street up, and we were like hiking up the side of this mountain. This was when I was in Geneva, or Genoa, which is where Christopher Columbus actually came from. But anyway, so we were there, and if you understand about Geneva, basically it's like mountains that come down, and there's just this little bit of a strip of land before it goes into the Mediterranean Sea. And so almost everything is along that strip, and then of course there's some homes that go up on the side of the mountain. And so we were hiking up to where this guy's house was, and it was one of these really cool. It's so rare that Italians actually own their own land and their own home, because most of the time it's a government home and they just live in the city and so forth. But this guy had like a vineyard and had a garden and all this stuff, and he grew most of their own food. They had this big oven, this outside great big, like a brick kind of an oven. It's probably about 8 or 10 feet tall and wide, and had a couple different doors on it. And his wife came out, and she's just the cutest little thing. She's got all the apron and everything on, and she actually had started making the dinner a day in advance. I mean, they take this seriously. and they went up into the mountains and gathered pine nuts to make the pesto and so forth, and the basil, and they were out there, harvesting, and it was almost most of the meal was actually made literally from scratch. And we had a 13-course meal. It started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we weren't done with it until about 8:30 that night. And we talked, and they sang, and they did all kinds of stuff. And I mean, they absolutely the greatest hosts ever. But I tell you, they can really use up a lot of your time if you're not careful. But we kept bringing up the gospel, and they said, "Oh no, let's talk about America. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that." And we never really did get a hardly a discussion in, but I'll tell you, it was an amazing meal. I mean, and every course they would have on a separate plate, bring out the knife and forks and a glass for that one, and then they would take it all the way off the table, and then they would bring the next course in. And I mean, you had prosciutto, and you had the antipasta, and all these basically hors d'oeuvres, 2 or 3 things of hors d'oeuvres and so forth, and then a couple of main dishes, and then then gelato and so forth, and they'd have the spumante, which is to cleanse your palate before you have the dessert. There may be maybe a couple of dessert courses too, and it was. But that was probably the most authentic Italian meal I had. But even when you just get in town and you just want to grab something to eat, they have these calzones, which is basically like a pizza folded up on itself and then sealed around the edges, so it keeps all the juice and everything in there. Oh. And they cook them in these ovens that are actually wood fired, so they have the soot from the wood, and so forth, the charcoal, if you will, from the wood as it gets on both sides. And actually, at first I was thinking, this is disgusting. It's got the, this charcoal. It's like it fell in the campfire when I was a Boy Scout. But that actually provided a lot of the, that kind of a smoky flavor and so forth that made it so good. It was wonderful. But yeah, if you're privileged enough to go on an Italian mission, you will not worry about liking the food, unless you don't like seafood.